Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. I hope you're doing well where you are. We're just going to wait a minute and then we can get started. We have a few people joining already, which is great to see from different places. So let's just give it one more minute and then we can start with our session, which is getting the most out of Smart Prep from a teacher point of view. I hope you're doing well on this 11th of December as the year is coming to an end for some of us. Obviously not if you're in China with Chinese New Year or places like Vietnam with the Lunar New Year. Okay, so it's 1:00 now, so I think we can start. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. We do have a Q&A, so if you do have questions, you can pop any questions as we go into the Q&A, and I will be answering questions at the end. I'm just going to share my screen so you can see the presentation. You should be able to see the presentation now, which says getting the most out of Smart Prep. Thank you. Okay, so today's session is all about getting the most out of Smart Prep. My name is Julian Burnley. I am your presenter for today, and we're going to focus on three things. So like any teacher, we have aims and objectives. So a bit like a lesson, and your aims and your objectives for this are you will focus on 5 important features for your students to focus on when preparing for PTE. So we're going to talk generally about how to help your students prepare for PTE. We're going to better understand what Smart Prep is, and then you're going to take away 6 usage cases of how you can use the free resources for Smart Prep as a teacher. So hopefully 3 things in this session that you will come away with. So before we start, just an introduction to myself. So you may have seen me on these webinars before with people like Bartek. My name is Julian Burnley. I am based in London, where it's very, very horrible and dark and gloomy. So I trust you're in a hotter climate. I hope you're in a hotter place than I am. And I am a product manager. I focus on preparation for PTE, for Pearson Education. Before this job, I was formerly a teacher for a very long time, working abroad in different countries. I have a few qualifications that help me teach. And I have experienced teaching, but also teacher training in terms of Cambridge Delta programs and things like that. My interests include assessment, pronunciation was my main focus as a teacher and as a trainer, and giving feedback. And in terms of my interests, maybe less important, is I like reading. I'm currently reading a book about South Africa, which is very interesting. I support a football team called Queen's Park Rangers, who are in the second league in England, and I like music as well. So that's a bit about me, but now we're going to push on and talk a little bit about the session today. So when I talk to teachers about PTE, we do hear sort of common comments or comments that come up quite a lot. So quite often we hear things like, I don't have enough resources for PTE as a teacher. Obviously, PTE is a newer test, having started in 2009. So it's about 15 years old. So it's newer than other tests. Straight to number 4. I don't have enough sample answers is a common complaint we get in terms of wanting more responses. I would like more official PTE resources, preferably resources that are free, because we know that that teachers want lots of free resources, and also in certain countries, teachers want to teach in a skill by skill way. So even though PTE is integrated with something like read aloud, testing, listening, testing reading and speaking, and repeat sentence being listening and speaking. Teachers want to teach in a logical way where they're doing speaking questions and then moving on to writing and things like that. So with some of these in mind, we did then move on to Smart Prep, but I'm just going to stop there and think about what's important for teachers when preparing for students for PTE. So what we have here is that what students really need is they need familiarization. So this is just understanding the different questions. So for example, and can you as a teacher, can you get across to your students the specifics about the question? So for example, answer short question, could be a noun, it could be an adjective. These little things you need to know as a teacher. Can you help your students know what to expect from the test in terms of the sections, how long it will take, what to expect? Is there a notepad they can write on during the test? Yes, there is. And the scoring of questions in terms of the PTE score guide, be that for PTE Academic or for PTE Core, and your knowledge of the scoring. So your knowledge that if a test taker uses a pre-memorized response for described image, that they will score 0 for fluency in pronunciation. So this knowledge in terms of questions, your knowledge if a test taker, when they do retail lecture, that every single question for retail lecture and for describe image will now go to a human check. So these are the things you need to get across to your students. You need to also ensure they have realistic expectations, that if you have quite a low-level student who is maybe pre-intermediate or A2, and they are aiming for 79 to migrate to Australia, that is a very big jump. So we need to be realistic with what gains they can make, especially if you're preparing them for a short time. Language and skill development is really important. What we find in all test prep environments is that there's a tendency just to focus on the familiarization. And actually what they need is improvement in skills and language. And when I say improvement in skills, that could be things like reading. So being able to read quickly, read for detail, read for gist, but also things like improving their grammar and vocabulary. Can they use a range of structures, grammatical structures for something like describe image? So even though describe image does not test your grammar, it only tests content, fluency, and pronunciation, it's still useful for them to have grammar structures so that they can quickly talk about the image they're seeing. And also things like speaking skills. How are you as a teacher, how are you developing their ability to use sentence stress in terms of when they say syllables in a sentence that are louder, higher, and longer? How are you helping them with intonation, with phonemes, and with pitch? So these are really important and directly what are the sort of things that are being measured in pronunciation in PTE. You also need to get across to your students tips and techniques. So there might be specific tips that you're trying to help your test taker. So generally teachers focus on familiarization and tips and techniques, but my argument is that you should also focus on language and skill development. In terms of tips and techniques, these could be things like for read aloud, pause at the commas and the full stops. If you're pausing before that, then it won't help with your phrasing of how you're trying to say something. So that finding the commas and the full stops will help a student break up what they're trying to do. Reorder paragraph, a tip could be try to identify the pronouns, things like these and this and the determiners, because that will help your student with identifying the topic sentence for reorder paragraph and then which paragraphs follow. If it starts with these as a paragraph, it's unlikely to be the first paragraph. These are all important tips that you can get across. And then things like summarize written text and summarize spoken text. So you can use commas, you can use colons, which can help your test taker to summarize the information in a concise way. And then finally, practice and feedback. So you do need to provide your students with lots of opportunities to practice, also opportunities for feedback. And I think as a teacher, you're in a perfect position to provide teacher feedback and especially human feedback. So now that describe image and retail lecture is going, all those questions are going to a human check. I think your feedback is more valuable and more important than ever in terms of how you can help them. And let me give you an example of that. So recently I had a student who was doing describe image, and I was supporting them, and they spoke very, very, very quickly at like 100 miles an hour. And they went through and spoke so quickly that I could not understand hardly anything they were saying. And that would be bad for a human check, because the human check for that question would not be able to understand the content of what they're actually saying, because they were speaking so fast. So my feedback was to slow down and focus on sentence stress. So it's really important that you give feedback. With some of the common teacher queries we've had, and with these 5 points, we have launched, so as of October the 22nd, we launched Smart Prep, which is our free preparation portal for PTE test takers, for PTE Academic, for PTE Core, and for PTE Home. And anyone can access Smart Prep. You just need to create a My PTE account. So you do not need to have a test. As a teacher, you can just go and you can create a My PTE account, and there's different resources that you can use to support your students. And we're going to go through some of these resources. And at the same time, it's fine for you to open up these resources and say, I'm using these resources from Pearson in my classes. I think one barrier for teachers always is how to get resources quickly, how to find digital resources that work. So we're going to have a look at Smart Prep and have a closer look at a demo of the type of resources that you can use in the classroom for Smart Prep. So I'm just going to come off the presentation, and then we're going to go into My PTE, and I'm going to show you the different parts of Smart Prep. So as I mentioned, you do not need a test to access Smart Prep. It's free for anyone. Your test takers, your students can access it. You can access it. You just need one account. You'll come straight into My PTE, and you'll see Smart Prep New, which is here on the screen. And then it's broken down into 3 areas. So we have a storefront where students can buy preparation if they want. For example, our packages of school practice tests, My Purchases, which I will show you later, which is where test takers can use their school practice tests. And the most useful thing for you as a teacher is the free resources bucket. So this is something that you can use, or if your test takers do buy school practice tests, but free resources is where we have most of our resources now. And that's for PTE Academic. I can toggle to PTE Core. So if you're doing tests for Canada, there's PTE Core, and there's PTE Home as well. So our smaller test for UK spousal visas and settlement. So if you're on to PTE Academic, you'll see straight away that down the left, we have some different areas. So we have general information, study plan, speaking, writing, reading, and listening. The study plan is actually launching tonight. So it's not available yet, but it will be available tomorrow. And there's bits in there that I will go through. So in terms of general information, it's one place, a one-stop shop for important resources for you and for the test taker. Always find it actually easier if you're looking for the school guide to get it from here, rather than having to find it on the website, because it's a little bit buried. We've got the test taker handbook for PTE Academic, what to expect in the test center. And then for general, we have something called a guided practice test, All Skills. And this is a mini version of the PTE practice test. If you click on it, the first time you click on these links, you will be asked to create an account, but then you can use the account going forward. And then what it does for you as a teacher, it just helps a student to go through and do one question for each question type for PTE Academic. We also have them for PTE Core. They can record their answer. So once most animals reach adulthood, they stop growing. In contrast, even plants that are thousands of years old continue to grow new needles and add new wood and produce cones and new flowers. They can listen back to their answer, and they can also listen to a sample answer of someone who's done the question, and then they can compare their answer. So this first one on the general tab, they can just go through a question for each one. You can use it for familiarization to make sure that they're okay. It gives answers. For speaking and writing, it gives sample answers. So if I just go through here, sample answers, so we can see they can put in, they can compare. And then when it comes to reading and listening, they can choose their options, submit, and it will tell them how many they have correct. They can also see the answers later, and they can go through one question. So this is a useful resource for familiarization, but also just in case you want to go through any questions. So this is a starting point, and this is within the general section. The second thing that you could do is in terms of, we've broken down resources skill by skill. So are you teaching speaking? Are you teaching writing? Are you teaching reading? And are you teaching listening? And there's 4 resources per tab. If we go to speaking, it goes to the speaking videos. So you can show the videos of each question. So for example, if you are teaching about repeat sentence, you can click and go to the video. There's more videos here in terms of a video course. If I just click here, it will go to a video course where there's videos which will help you with Jared, where you can go through, you can watch videos that your students can do a bit more practice, different practice, and they can watch more videos. And we have these for speaking, listening, writing, and reading in terms of the video courses. Also, what we have here is a sectional practice test. So again, they can click to the test and they can go here. And then what they get with a sectional practice test is they get, and this is all free, they get an opportunity to do the whole section. So for example, this one has 28 speaking questions, the same as a real test. And again, they can go through and they can do they can record themselves, they can do sample answers, and they can go through exactly the same number to get a feel for the test. So 6 read aloud, there should be 10 repeat sentences. They can compare their answers, all different ones, 3 describe image ones. And we'll go through in a minute how you can use this as a teacher in your class. They can go through here. They can do this, actually 4 describe image here. There's 2 retell lecture, and they can go through and they can practice. They can check sample answers. And if they want to go to something like listening, let's see how that works. Again, they can do a full section. They can listen to the audio. They can practice. They can check against a sample answer for summarized spoken text. And for listening, they can see whether their answers are correct once they've done it. So I did not get that one correct. And they can go through. So there's quite a lot of practice here. And then the final bit in terms of the skills is we have test tip documents, which are useful for you to go through with your students. So this is for listening, and it goes through test tips for each different question. So if you're teaching writing, you can go to the writing one and go through some test tips. Something that we have launching tonight, but will be ready for tomorrow, is our study plan. So our study plan is for test takers that are new, but you can also support your students to do this as teachers, where they can familiarize themselves with PT Academic, and they can build a sense of progress. So by clicking on the study plan for PT Academic, they can click off as they do things. So have they watched all the videos? Yes, I have. Have I watched all the video courses? I'll click on the resources here. And then we have our different practice items. So guided practice test, mini, we have school practice test, which is optional. The section practice test that I just showed you. And also what we have launching for tomorrow is we have full guided practice tests. And what this is, it's a full experience of a test. So we have 4 of them launching tomorrow: test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4. This should take 4 hours, and a test taker can sit down and they can complete the full test. They do not get a score at the end, but they do get a feel for the test. They can compare, again, their answers. They can record their answers against sample answers. And they can go through and do it exactly the same as a test. And this is a free resource. And if I just go forward to the course, maybe I want to skip. So maybe I want to skip and just do reading. It's got the same number of questions. So we've got for fill in the blanks, reading, writing. They can do 5 questions. They can see. So I've done a fantastic job there. I got them all correct. They can go through and they can do more practice, definitely for reading and listening, where they can see whether their answers were correct or incorrect. Let's just go through. So that was partially correct. Reorder paragraph. So every single question type that they can practice. And from tomorrow, if they go into study plan, if they go into practice and check, if they go to full versions, your students can access the full versions of the tests, and there are 4 of them that they can do. And then they've also got test tips, and they can tick as they're doing something, and then you can help your students to build a sense of progress. There is no reason why you couldn't say, as part of my teaching you, I want you to go through and do these resources. You could do them in a blended approach that I will go through in a minute, and they can tick off and do things. And it's exactly the same for PTE Core. We do not yet have a study plan for PTE Core, but we have resources for the specific skills. So there's a lot now of free preparation from tomorrow within Smart Prep. So it's a fantastic chance for you as a teacher to get and have a look and think about how you can use some of these resources with your students to teach them. And even for me, I found them really useful, because with students, when I need more practice, I can simply just go here, I can go to listening, and I've got practice on my fingertips that I can use with students. And as I mentioned, we do have school practice tests, so they can go through my purchases. We are, from tomorrow, also launching, fingers crossed, our new platform for school practice tests. So even though the school practice tests will remain the same, the look and feel of practice tests has come in line with the actual test. Let me just go back here, because I've had that open for a while. Just going to go to test B. And see if that loads up relatively quickly. So in terms of a school practice test, we have aligned sections. So we're giving more support in terms of a test checklist at the beginning. There's a microphone check, which is just like the test, actually, where they can test their microphone and even the same images. And then it goes to the section. So this is a paid resource because it goes through the official PTE scoring engine. And they can go through and they can look at this, they can do the sections. So this is exactly like the test now in terms of how the timer is broken down. 1 minute for personal introduction, then you have the speaking section, 10 minutes for summarized written text, and then the essay. And then it starts with the personal introduction, and then it goes on. So this is something else that we have been working on. So that's the demo of how you can use Smart Prep. I'm just going to go back to the slides, and we're going to look in further detail how you can use Smart Prep. And we're going to look at 6 different usage cases for using Smart Prep. Okay, so the first usage case that we have is diagnostic tests. So when you take on a new student, it's really important that you understand their current level, where they are, what they can do, and also the gap towards the score that they need. So what you can do is, with that mini guided practice test that I showed you on the general screen, that's a fantastic opportunity, especially if you're working with a student on a one-to-one level. You can sit down with your student, you can go through the questions, you can make notes as they go through the questions. You can make notes. What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? So if you're starting with read aloud, you can straight away say, okay, they're pausing quite a lot, they're hesitating a lot. they're having some problems with some multi-syllable words like profitability, but their pronunciation is generally good. They've got good sentence stress. So you can sit down with your student on a one-to-one level and go through it, or you can do it in a group setting. So another popular thing is for students to bring their own devices. They can bring their own devices. You can ask them to access, to create a MyPTE account, and they can go through and do it by themselves with you in the class. You can monitor around the room, and you can think about what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. And I would say that this approach is actually sometimes better than just relying on an AI practice program. So what I see from AI practice programs, I won't name those programs, is that students do them a lot and they practice a lot and they can be useful, but what students tend to focus on is their score. So it's always, I'm getting 70, I'm getting 80. I'm getting 80 in this practice test. Will I get 80 in the test? And what research has found is that what students really need to focus on in terms of improving is not what the score is. It's actually what their gaps are and how they can improve their gaps. So when these students do lots and lots of practice, they tend to just focus on the score. They don't come out from read aloud and say, oh, I was speaking a little bit too slowly, or my sentence stress. And just focusing on the score is not going to be that helpful. So it's the feedback that you can give as a teacher, and that quality feedback is really, really helpful. And at the moment, AI practice does not do that. It does not give really, really specific feedback. A lot of the practice programs give very generic feedback. So for example, I did one the other day, and I did a different practice program and I got 70, I think, in read aloud. And the feedback was very, very generic and general, sort of saying you should focus on sentence stress. And you could focus on sentence stress, phonemes, consonants, vowels, but nothing specific. Whereas a teacher, you can give that really important feedback. So that's the first one. You could use the mini guided practice test. You could also use it at the end of a course, sort of as an achievement test, if you're trying to show how they've improved. So this is the first usage case. The second usage case is to embed Smart Prep into your syllabus. So when you're giving your students practice, you could give them practice through Smart Prep. You could say, okay, we're going to go to the writing or the speaking section, and we're going to use this question, and I'm going to teach you how to do this question through Smart Prep. You could bookmark the important pages in a lesson, so you can go straight to the practice activity, and then you can give them lots of feedback, as I suggested before. For reading and listening, it's similar to speaking and writing. I think students tend to focus too much on the scores. So fill in the blanks. I got 4 out of 5, or I got 3 out of 5. But what does that actually mean? Where are your students' challenges when it comes? Where are their strengths? So with this example here, instead of a student just going away and saying, look, I've got 1 out of 4, this is a problem for me. What feedback can we give to students based on what they've done? Can we focus more on how they've done something rather than just the score? So straight away, I can see that, look, some experts believe the use of robots lead to a future. So maybe they have tense problems, right? In terms of not identifying the correct tense. A recent study has shown that the effect of using robots, okay, so maybe their vocabulary is quite good. In the US, robots are mostly using in, so it could be a tense problem again, it could be a preposition problem. And the last one I've got nevertheless. So could it be a coherence or connector problem? And then how can I support them with these tenses and with these linking words to help them improve? So I'm noticing a gap in their reading. How can I improve that? Or are they doing this reading and they're doing 4 questions and it's taken them 4 minutes? That's a long time to focus on just one gap fill, one fill in the blanks activity. So is there specific feedback I can give there about the student speeding up? What can I tell and what feedback can I give specifically in reading, writing, listening, and speaking? that the test taker can and the student can improve. The third usage case is using Smart Prep for blended learning, for homework, or for boosting learner autonomy. So it's so important that learners are autonomous, that they can learn by themselves. And one way is what you could do is you could have a handout where you say, before I teach you, before you come to my class, do these activities in Smart Prep. So go into Smart Prep, go into the study plan and do one full guided practice test, or go into speaking and do the speaking guided practice test sectional one, or go into speaking and do and read the test tips. And this can save you time because then they will come in with information about the question. So that will save you time and give you more time for practice and feedback. And actually teaching language, what language can you teach them instead? Because what we find is that a lot of time is spent telling students about question types. Whereas could that be done at home? So you're saving time. Could Smart Prep be used for homework? So after they've done a lesson with you, if you've just helped them with retail lecture and you're helping them with note-taking, and helping them with some language to summarize a lecture, could they go and then do some speaking practice with Smart Prep through the guided practice test for homework? And that would also help you in terms of retention for students. So students need to be able to retain important information. You may have seen this before. This is something called the forgetting curve. Normally on the left, we have sort of percentages. So when you tell a student something or when they learn something, so for example, if I do read aloud and you notice that my sentence stress is wrong, and you say, look, you need to focus on your sentence stress. And then you say, sentence stress is when you pronounce syllables in sentences that are higher, louder, and longer. And we stress words that are, we stress syllables that are important and keywords. So these words are louder. So these words are louder. So we've got words and louder. And then you might do some practice with them. So they practice sentence stress and they practice read aloud, saying the words with a bit more sentence stress. So if you say it here in day 0, when you're with them in the class, that's great. And they'll go away and they will think, okay, sentence stress, that's what I need to focus on. But as you can see, over time, they forget. Day 2, it's dropped. And then it's dropped and it's dropped. And in terms of information, by day 30, what you've told them, they might remember 5% of that. So they might just remember sentence stress, but I can't remember what it means. So this is called the forgetting curve. And this happens to all of us. We always forget things after we've learnt them. So the idea is that you need to constantly review your material as a student, and then you'll remember. And the more times you review, I think there's been research that shows to move information from your short-term to your long-term memory, you need to review something over a 30-day period about 20 times. And if you keep on reviewing it, so I've learnt it at day 0, then I might do some Smart Prep practice. Oh, my teacher told me about sentence stress. I need to keep on remembering that. I'm forgetting it. And then day 10, my teacher gives me more feedback on sentence stress. And then I do a mock test. Oh, my teacher's giving me more feedback on sentence stress. And then after all these occasions where the student is remembering, that information is going to move from their short-term to their long-term memory. And they're suddenly going to be like, oh, sentence stress is this, it means this. I know what it is, and I'm going to keep on working at improving my English with sentence stress. And that will help them massively to get a higher score in the pronunciation subtrait for the speaking questions. So, and Smart Prep can play a role in helping them to remember, to retain information. And it's also to do with how much information they can hold as well, because there's also something that you might have heard called the cognitive load theory, which is about how much information we can actually take in 1 hour or in a shorter period of time. So if you're telling your student loads and loads of information, they're naturally going to forget. And it's a bit like when you start a new job. You have all these meetings with people for the first 2 weeks. and you talk to them and they tell you loads of things, then after 2 weeks, how much of that stuff do you actually remember? And then you go back to people and you're like, I can't remember what you said, even if we take notes. So how can we keep on reviewing those materials for our students in order to increase the retention? And I think this is really important for your students too, because your students are paying you to teach them effectively, and they want value for money. And what's value for money is them being able to remember stuff, being able to retain things, and being able to see improvement. So really important. And even if you don't use Smart Prep, just thinking about in your syllabus, how can you provide repetition of things that you're doing? How can you go back to things that you've already taught? So if you are teaching, let me think of an example. If you are teaching summarize spoken text and there's some feedback, how can you go back to that feedback to then ensure they keep on going towards that? Okay, we're going to move on to usage case 4. So other ways that you can use Smart Prep, and I put 2 things here. So shadow reading and the teacher as a model. So as the teacher, you can use Smart Prep and you can show the student how to do the task before they have a go, or your students if you have a group class. So you can go through the question. You can say, okay, I'm going to do the question. You can show it, and then you can say, okay, so demand for alternatives to traditional dairy products has surged in recent years. In particular, milk made from plant sources has become an increasingly lucrative retail sector. Many of these products are marketed in terms of their economic credentials. However, the truth may be somewhat harder to reconcile, and certainly more complex than companies try to portray. And then you can say, I've given you an example. As you've noticed, I'm trying to pause at the full stops. I'm trying not to hesitate and trying not to mumble. Okay, so you're giving an example using Smart Prep. You can use the sample answer if you're not confident. You can say, let's look at the sample answer. And then after that, you can let your students have a go. There is a approach or model which is called I do, we do, you do. And this is an example of it's not me, but it's an example of a teacher trying to show students how to lift a very heavy weight, which sometimes it can be difficult doing it yourself, which is why it's good to have sample answers. And in the I do, we do, you do model, the first thing is you show an example and you say, this is a great example. I will show you how to do it. Then the students do it in groups or in in groups or in pairs. And then finally, you can pick individual students to have a go and do it themselves, and you can provide feedback. And this way, you're slowly supporting them. You're giving them an example in I do. They're supported in we do because they're working together in pairs. And then finally, when they're doing it by themselves, and it's the most difficult, they've had a lot of scaffolding, they've had a lot of support, and they should be more confident. And this is one way you can use Smart Prep. So this is the teacher as a model. So using yourself as a model to show how these questions can be done. And you can do that for any question. You could do it for writing, you could do it for reading, you could do a reading passage, and you can talk as you're doing it, how you're going through it. So you can say, look, reading, reorder paragraphs. I'm looking for determiners first and looking for these and this and seeing, and then I can then look at my paragraph. So that's one way of doing it. I'm just going to go back to another example is shadow reading. So with this read aloud example, I'm just going to stop sharing actually, because I'll need to share it with some sound. Share sound, here we go. So you should now see this is read aloud. I'm just going to go, which one am I going to go to? Let's go to this one. Got a read aloud question. and we can listen to a sample answer. So when I play this, you should hear the sample answer.
New research shows that people who spend more time outside and...
That's the sample answer. Your students can record themselves and then compare themselves. I think a really good thing to do actually is if they record themselves like this. So new research shows that people who spend more time outside and in natural environments are usually healthier and communicate more often with others. These people are more active, tend to do more exercise in green spaces, and make frequent trips out to see their friends and neighbors. Okay, so I took 15 seconds to say that. The sample answer takes 22 seconds.
New research shows that people who spend more time outside and in natural environments are usually healthier and communicate more often with others. These people are more active, tend to do more exercise in green spaces, and make frequent trips out to see their friends and neighbors.
Okay, so that sample answer is 22 seconds. So that's an absolutely fine sample answer. It was absolutely perfect. It's slower than my sample answer, but that's okay because I was speaking quite fast, but they're both acceptable. What I would do is if your student is saying this and their time is quite far away, especially slower than the sample answer, then that could indicate that they're having problems with fluency. If they are speaking slowly in the test and they are saying I'll just record again, new research shows that that's already 7 seconds and I've said 5 words, then that could indicate that they really need to speed up and work on their fluency. So they can compare times, or the other piece of advice of how they can use Smart Prep is something called shadow reading. So what they can do is they can find a sample answer and they can press play and they can read it at the same time and see if they can keep up with the fluency. So this is a really important and useful task. So let's have a go.
New research shows that people who spend more time outside and in natural environments are usually healthier and communicate more often with others. These people are more active, tend to do more exercise in green spaces, and make frequent trips out to see their friends and neighbors. New research.
So I can keep up. I've done a good job with that. Shadow reading, if you've got a student who is struggling to keep up, if they're doing something like this, new research
who spend more time outside and in natural environments are usually healthier and communicate more.
I'm not keeping up, and that's a bit of a problem to show that I'm too slow. And that can be done for any speaking question. It can be done for repeat sentence, really important skill. It can also be done for describe image. So you can read the sample answer, you can listen and try and keep up.
The graph shows the type of holiday accommodation chosen by tourists in a town between 1960 and 2000.
So that's a way that you can use Smart Prep to show and do some shadow reading. So that is usage case number 4. So you've got I do, we do, you do, comparing your answer against a sample answer and trying shadow reading together. Usage case number 5 is using it for homework and using it to build a sense of progress. As I mentioned, I used to be a teacher. I also used to manage teaching centers, and which I stopped doing in 2020, but I managed 4 teaching centers and over 4,000 students and a teacher base of about 45 teachers. And whenever we did surveys with our students to try to understand what they needed most, it always came down to 2 things with students. It came down to value for money. So some students felt they were getting really good value for money. Other students felt they wanted more and they were paying too much, and that the value that we were giving them as teachers was not high enough. So it's something we really had to work on. And the way we worked on it was by building a sense of progress. And something like this within Smart Prep, with students ticking off things they've done, going through and saying, oh, look, I've done all this work, it can help you to build that sense of progress. So sense of progress was the other thing that comes up, I think, in every single school, especially if you've got students who are paying their own money and they're adults. They really want to see progress and see how they're improving. And if you can show a sense of progress, so using something like this, or even in your own teaching practice by saying, having some kind of tick box activity where you're focusing. So for example, if my student has a problem with sentence stress, I can say, okay, we're focusing on sentence stress for the next 2 weeks. We can focus on it every other lesson, and then I can show the sense of progress. I can praise my student. At the end, I can say, wow, you're doing a really good job with sentence stress. You've really improved that. And I'm showing a sense of progress. Sense of progress shows value for money. It boosts engagement because your student will be motivated if they've got something to work on, if they can see how they're progressing, especially through steps. It promotes retention because they're remembering things like that forgetting curve. And it also creates a rapport, so a relationship between you and your student, because you can praise them and you can recognize when they've done something well. And you can recognize if they're going through and you say, well, I've noticed if they start the lesson and you say, okay, can we have a look at your study plan? And you say, oh, look, I've noticed that you've ticked off the first guided practice test. Good job. You're doing some work outside of class. That's really good. So this is the fifth usage case. And the final usage case is you can use Smart Prep for flexible planning and sort of in the lesson questions and feedback. And let me give you an example of this that I had 2 weeks ago. So I was teaching a student one-to-one in something that we do for Pearson, and they signed up for a lesson on write essay, and I had them one-to-one. At the beginning of the lesson, the student said, I'm very confident with write essay. And they said, here's my write essay. And I looked through it and I said, yeah, this looks really good. There's not a lot of feedback here. And then I said, okay, so you're confident with write essay and you seem to be good at that. So what do you want to focus on and where do you think you need most help? And then I said, read aloud and repeat sentence are difficult questions. And the student said, I'm really good at repeat sentence as well. So I do not need to focus on repeat sentence. And they said, I'm doing some AI practice and I'm getting 80 in every repeat sentence. So then I said, okay, well, let's try one repeat sentence. So I got Smart Prep up. I showed the repeat sentence. I got them to listen to the repeat sentence, and then the student repeated the repeat sentence, just like a test. And when they did this, I realized that the student had quite slow fluency. The student was hesitating a lot and wasn't remembering all the words either. And when they were struggling to remember some of the words, it caused long pauses. So then I straight away realized that actually repeat sentence is something they need to focus on. So I realized they weren't getting it. And then I realized that after talking to them a little bit more, that they were using AI practice, but they were getting 80 after doing the question 3 or 4 times. So they're practicing the same question, but that's not really a test-like experience, because in the test you're not going to hear it 4 times. You're just going to hear it once. So then I was able to provide feedback on myself, and then I was able to then go through Smart Prep, which is here, and I was able to simply go through the speaking questions in that section. Let me just go through it. So I went straight to repeat sentence and I said, okay, we need to focus on repeat sentence. And then we just did more practice, more feedback, and tried to focus on becoming more fluent. So I just went.
This particular type of tree is able to grow very quickly in a wet climate.
They said it, and then I gave feedback. Then we listened to a sample answer, we read the sample answer, and then we went on to the next one. They did the next one, and then I kept on giving feedback and trying to get them to improve in terms of their fluency, their pausing, and some tips around that. So what you can use it for flexible planning in the lesson, for formative assessment. So in terms of if you're doing some practice with your students in a lesson and you notice an area that they need to work on. So for example, if you notice that for writing, they're struggling with content and topic and supporting ideas, you can just focus on that and you can get Smart Prep up and you can support them. And I've also put something called Dogma here, which is a teaching approach that you may have heard of, which is about focusing on what the students want to focus on in the lesson. So not planning lessons, but focusing on what they want to focus on. So you can then teach them in a motivational, but also way, but also giving lots of feedback. Other considerations, just before we finish, I realize we only have about 5 minutes left, is the good thing about Smart Prep is that it's all human questions and audios, and this is like the test. So in PTE, we do not use AI audio. So none of our audio has been created by AI. And also all of our questions have been created by people. So we do not use AI for questions. And I think the problem with, especially for AI audio, if you're listening to something that's been created by AI, quite often the stress can be wrong, the speed can be wrong, connected speech can be wrong, and also sometimes the accents are not right. And I would be careful in practice programs that you ensure that your students get practice of real audio from real people, like the test, but also they get a variety of accents. So if they're choosing an accent through AI, so for example, if I'm always choosing the British accent to focus on, they're not going to get a variety of accents and practice of a variety of accents. And for PT, they might hear an Australian, they might hear someone who's British, who's Canadian, who's American. It could be any of these. So really important to focus on authentic audios. Obviously, in terms of individual versus group classes, for an individual, you can give more specific feedback one-to-one, but you can still do that whole class. You can walk around. You can see what errors they're making. If you're teaching really large classes, you're teaching 30 or 40, you can ask students to nominate themselves, try a question, and you can give feedback. Also feedback on integrated skills. So as I said, repeat sentence is listening, but also speaking, but sometimes, or all times, they are interconnected. So when we're giving feedback on something like repeat sentences, it could be because their listening is poor, and that could be the blocker. They could have fantastic pronunciation, fantastic sentence stress, fantastic fluency, but if they can't hear the words, they're going to struggle. And can you as a teacher give feedback on 2 skills at the same time, if that's what they're struggling with? I'm just going to finish with next steps for Smart Prep. So as I mentioned, the study plan will go live tonight or tomorrow, depending on where you are. So what I recommend is on Thursday, which is tomorrow, create a MyPT account and find Smart Prep and have a look around yourself. Explore the resources. Consider the 6 usage cases that we've explored today. Explore the full guided practice tests that are launching. So practice test 1, practice test 2, practice test 3, practice test 4. You could always bookmark resources on your laptop so that you can easily access them in terms of official resources. And you can always put together a one-pager for your student showing Smart Prep as an added value resource that you have attended a webinar for and that you're passing to your student through PTE to you. So I think that's the end. I'm just going to, we do have something else, but I'm not going to go through that at the moment. I'm just going to check if we have Bartek.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. So just hi, my name is Bartek Janiak. So I had a chance to appear on some of the webinars in 2024 and just finishing the year 2024 and moving on into 2025. We are already finalizing the content of I Teach PT webinars in 2025. So we are preparing a series of knowledge-packed workshops and webinars that we will be delivering for you, it's going to be like international scope. So look forward for getting the news from our company. And we are aiming to start in January, so quite soon. And those series will go on throughout the whole 2025. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Bartek. That's exciting. And as people have noted, nearly Christmas for me, hence the Christmas tree in my background. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a break, Bartek, and then we can start with some more teacher webinars in 2025. And I've seen already there's some really good questions in the question Q&A. And the first one was about, I'm just going to pick on one of them first, which was from anonymous attendee. But is there a limit to the number of practice we can use these materials over and over again? Yeah, so you can use these materials over and over again in terms of, so in the free resources, all the things I've been going through today in terms of the guided practice tests, so here, and the ones in the study plan, you can use them over and over again. So you could use them with 100 students, you could use them with 1,000 students. Ideally, you could, if you're showing them on your screen, you just need one account. You can show them on your screen. If students are doing them separately, they will need to create a MyPT account, which is free, but they can use them as many times as possible. Abhishek, can we make more than 10 questions, or is it limited to be only 10? So I assume that's about read aloud. So there are different practice tests. So if you're, sorry, not read aloud, repeat sentence. If you are thinking about repeat sentence, there's 10 questions in test 1, 10 questions in test 2, 10 questions in test 3, 10 questions in test 4. There's 10 questions in the speaking one, and there's maybe one there. So there are maybe 51 different repeat sentence questions across the whole platform. So there's quite a lot there that you can repeat time and time again. And I can see another question, which is good evening from Chennai, India. Yep, so great to have some people on from Chennai. So that's it, I think. So I'm just going to stop sharing. And finally, thank you so much for attending this webinar. And I hope you've got a lot out of this webinar. I should probably, like any good teacher, I should repeat the main aims, but the 6 usage cases, which I'm just going to go through in a minute. So diagnostic tests, number 1, using it in your classes as part of your syllabus. Number 2, homework, blended learning. Number 3, shadow reading, teacher as a model. Number 4, building a sense of progress. Number 5, and 6 was flexible teaching. So I hope you've got a lot out of this webinar, and thank you so much everybody for attending, and have a great afternoon or evening wherever you are, and looking forward to seeing everyone in 2005 on the webinars that we have planned then. Thank you very much.